Chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto, marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto. Dai pasina kupindira kwaishe, chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto, marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto. Dai pasina kupindira kwaishe.
Welcome to this edition of The Situation Right Now, where we discuss all issues that matter. We discuss political, social, and economic issues afflicting Zimbabwe. In this special edition, which is proudly brought to you by Kotrad from Masvingo, in proud partnership with Heart and Soul TV and radio, we are going to be discussing the anthemic issue, corruption in local authorities, lack of accountability and transparency. The Auditor General's report that was produced and presented to Parliament this year exposed massive fissures of corruption that are happening in local authorities. Looking at the aspects of Masvingo Town Council, we also heard that they didn't have proper accounting systems where fuel was being siphoned from the local authority, even for personal businesses. We also heard that while those on the ground, the municipal or police and officers who collect money from flea markets, were collecting money in local currency, in foreign currency, in rands, in the United States dollars, but when they submit it finally to the office, they would have converted it somehow magically. It would have become local currency. Now we want to discuss these issues to see how, if any, there has been a response in dealing with these issues of corruption, how we are getting to a space where local authorities, councillors can be trusted, ratepayers can pay their money effectively without fear that it will be abused for personal gain. Now, joining me in studio to discuss these issues are the people who are in charge of local authorities. I have the former Deputy Minister in Local Government, and who is now currently the MDC Alliance Secretary for Local Government. Now he's the one who's mandated by the MDC Alliance that controls also Masvingo City Council, Harare City Council, Kwekwe City Council, Bulawayo City Council, and other major urban local authorities. We want to hear what they are doing to ensure that they bring transparency and accountability. I'm also joined in studio by leaders in ensuring that issues of corruption are tracked and brought to light, and also there are also leaders in ensuring that corruption stops, that we improve on our corruption ranking. This is the Transparency International Zimbabwe, the training, the research programs manager at Transparency International Zimbabwe. And thank you very much for joining us. Beautiful. Now, thank you very much, Mkoma Cecil, for coming through.
Thank you, Blessed.
Amazing. You have vast experience in local government. I remember when I started my journalism career in the Midlands, you were then the executive mayor of Gweru, and I would come into your office and we'd have conversations. But there's this issue that continues to crop up, that local authorities or councils have become the hub of corruption. Now, can you just talk to us about this view, this public perception about corruption in local authorities?
Thank you very much, Blessed. The observation that corruption is mainly found in local authorities is firstly inaccurate, but perhaps the discourse can be reframed to say corruption is pervading our society at the moment, whether it's local government, whether it's central government, whether it's private sector, whether it's people on the streets. There is a general cultural shift towards kungwava. These are terms that are coming up that seem to accept that people can live through hook and crook. And there is need for us as a nation to get deeper into the challenge, into the problem. Why, for example, a teacher, I started off as a teacher actually, and I was happy to live basically on my job as a teacher, but today people, they do too many things, and sometimes they end up with their hands in the cookie jar, and that has to be accepted. That there is a general moral decadence in our socio-economic dynamics in the country as a whole, and we want to ask questions as to why it's like that. The next thing is to accept that indeed in local authorities, and it's properly framed, as opposed to what we have always had, where people seem to get into a council and disaggregate it into councillors and staff and apportion corruption to either elected officials or to appointed officials, rather than looking at the whole composite and say, is there transparency, is there integrity, people still guided by those moral values that used to be very central in our communities. As the MDC Alliance, we do believe that in a random sample, in a random normal society, you always get some aberrations, you always get some people that are corrupt, and indeed in our local authorities there are cases of corruption that is pop up here and there. And the answer is not an argument around whether it's there or not. We should be measured on what we do when we find it. When we find that there is true corruption, we should be measured as to what we do.
I want us to come back to that aspect of measuring so that we can begin to take you to account. But before we go there, I want the experts in looking at corruption, not in corruption, in looking at issues of corruption and flagging them and raising the issues. Now, one, the Auditor General released a report. Now, can you just probably just take us through some of those findings around local authorities? What were the serious issues, the red flags that came out of the Auditor General's report?
Thank you very much for having me. The report indicates various forms of irregularities, particularly when you examine what the local authorities have been doing in before. And perhaps maybe let me start by saying that some of the issues that have been raised have been recurring. So you'll find that there are some of the issues that have not been solved in the previous reports. For example, aspects of where there are no policies, there are no risk management policies, in some of the local authorities. So this has been recurring. So we have been having some of these issues over time, and there hasn't been any deliberate effort to respond to them decisively. But on an overall view, there are issues to do with, for example, the issues of stands. I think there's a case of Chitungwiza. Chitungwiza is actually, there's a list of so many areas where there's a rise, a proliferation of stands that are not regulated, and stands that are, they're actually put in, they're actually allocated in places that are not designated for that. And you also have the cases of maybe where the issues of debt, the council authorities are not able to actually develop systems or are not implementing systems that are in place to ensure that they collect debt. So we have councillors that have so many years have been failing to collect debt, but at the same time that is a direct proportion or effect in terms of the quality of services that they they give out to the people. And there are also issues to do with, I mentioned the aspects of governance issues, where the policies are not there in place. And also maybe of concern is the aspect of procurement irregularities, where like you mentioned, the aspect of fuel, and also where some of the goods, some of the cars are bought, but they're not delivered. And it's been now so many years. So these are some of the some of the issues that the AG has actually raised. And it's actually a concern because this affects the quality of services that people are paying or need. So in the long run, we have people that are paying services to the local authorities, but they're not getting the quality service that they deserve. And I'm sure there are some of the reasons. Maybe you can advise us in terms of why some of these issues are still emerging while they've been raised before.
Yeah. So this is where I wanted us to come. You said we measure from how you respond to these issues once they are raised. But here in the Auditor General's report, and as Anne is saying, is that these issues are not new and nothing has been done. In fact, they continue and continue. Why?
Well, again, Blessed, you clearly from what my colleague from Transparency is saying, the steep is really not corruption. It's more incompetence. It's more lack of efficiency in the systems. It's more absence of living systems. If you look at the accounting systems in most of these local authorities, when I was mayor myself, they have been using what is called Proman accounting system. Today, it's completely, it doesn't measure to the exigencies of today, the difficulties of today, the cleverness, the ugly cleverness of today's practitioners. So this could be this is the challenge, and it's really not that you have to look at the MDs. We have to look at the whole system. Looking at procurement, for example, is the institution strong enough? Is the institution of council sufficiently strong to deal with the challenges that they do have? And I posit that it's not. One, the position of mayor has been enfeebled very badly to the extent that the mayor does not have sufficient strength to make sure that things run according to his political plan. So you have got that challenge where your elected officials and the appointed officials are not working spanned together for one common purpose. And it's all to do with the broader legislation.
But if I would say that your councillors, those elected on the MDC Alliance ticket, and your party have actually intentionally allowed this weakness to go on so that you can personally benefit and steal from the people.
Blessed, we have not allowed this. We are not the ones that removed the provision of the executive mayor, where the mayor had to be a person with certain experience, certain qualifications, elected directly by the people. So that is levels of accountability, where a person is elected by a whole constituents, as opposed to a person being elected by 25, 30 people. The levels, the depth of transparency and accountability is affected automatically. So we posit that we need to go back to directly elected people who can answer to a broader mass of people that voted for them. Mayor Muduri, for example, myself, for example, I was elected by the whole of Beru. But today, the new system, not put in place by the MDC, by the way. We are proponents of strong directly elected mayors who are accountable to the people, not to a few councillors. Mayors that will find it very, very difficult to manipulate a few people. So that's one thing. We believe that we must strengthen that institution. You cannot, Harare, for example, is bigger than maybe 10 ministries. And these ministries have got a full-time political head and an accounting officer. But in the case of Harare, the mayor is ceremonial. Harare is bigger than, its budget is probably bigger than the budget of Lesotho. You cannot have part-time business for such big work. So you need a strong, well-qualified mayor, full-time, engaged with the business of the people. That will help deepen issues of transparency. That will help deepen issues of accountability.
Does this make sense to you?
Maybe let me say that some of the issues that the AG raises are actually concerning. For example, where you have procurement processes and there are no supporting documents, receipts. I mean, in a proper, I think even I'm sure if you are running a tuck shop, you'll actually buy whatever you buy, you actually get receipts. I mean, it's the norm. But you have institutions, local authorities that do not even fail to provide supporting documents for the purchases that they've done. So I'm not sure now whether should we put it at a bigger level and start to say maybe people are not competent, or it's a case of where people have actually done their deals and they've actually gained a lot. I think these are some of the small things that the AG raises that I think are a bit more of a concern. And I think we should also look at it in such a way that aside from what the AG raises, we are very much aware, I'm sure citizens have experienced it, where people are asked to pay bribes to maybe mayors for them to, to elected officials so that they can get stands. Simple things. So are we saying, are we ignoring some of the petty levels of corruption that is existing within our societies and try to paint a bigger picture out of it? I think there are some of the things that are actually everyday experiences of corruption, which we need to also interrogate and discuss, because the elected officials need to be accountable even at a local level, at a lower level, despite us talking about how people are doing in the high offices. But let's look at what the elected officials are doing at a very, very local level. How are they interacting with their citizens? Are they accountable? Are they not demanding bribes? Are they not demanding favors so that they can actually deliver some of the things to our citizens? I think these are questions that we need to also be asking.
So this is a point that really makes sense to me, that do we need to have an executive mayor to ensure that you as a political party put before the people of integrity to run local authorities. In Masvingo, for example, you have issues of corruption in terms of land sales. You have issues of corruption in terms of money changing from rand to bond note before it gets to the council bank account. I mean, do we honestly need an executive mayor for that?
Well, I'm basically saying we need a strong supervisor system. There is no running away from that. If you weaken the institutions and the supervisory systems, you are bound to end up with things that you call petty corruption. But let's also look at the framework around procurement. I'm sure most of us are unaware that councillors are not involved at all in procurement processes. During my time, we used to have what we called a procurement board within council, which was composed of 7 or so councillors. And these are the guys who would look at what the staff is doing, supervise, oversight, sometimes reject certain things that staff would bring forth. But that has been killed. There are no procurement boards anymore in all our councils. So there are procurement committees, which committees are composed just of staff. So your councillors have been enfeebled. Their capacity to supervise, to control, to manage those processes have been taken away. And these procurement boards report elsewhere. They don't even procurement committees. They report elsewhere. They don't report directly to the councillors. So you need to look at strengthening these systems.
So what are councillors doing then?
With respect to procurement?
Yeah, I mean,
They
in
don't
respect to council business, because I'm thinking council mostly is about procurement, because you're procuring a service that you then give to people.
No. They don't procure, they don't take buying decisions. They make general policy to say, look, we will need to spend effort on roads, for example, and this is our budget. And then the purchasing, which is where the corruption is done by officials who don't report to their councillors. And as I'm saying it to you, during our time, we actually had local control on the procurement processes. So you need strong institutions. You need strong systems for us to make sure that corruption is nipped in the bud. If it's nyeke, then people do as they feel, and this is what you see now. Since the removal of executive mayors, the removal of procurement committees,
But
look at what's happening now.
Answered my question. My question is, it appears that your councillors lack integrity. Many have been arrested over allegations of land corruption. If you for instance, if you walk into Masvingo right now, there's a challenge where there's this space called the range, where people have been settled on wetlands, in dams. You know, where there was a dam has just been removed, and unregistered housing cooperatives are spawning there, and you haven't taken any action. Now, you said you take action.
We do. Our record is clear
So
on
what action have you taken
actions that
for instance, in Masvingo?
our record is clear on actions that we take. Look at our history with Tungwiza. Look at our processes with respect to assessing where the corruption is. But what you say about allegations of corruption, some of it is really true, just allegations. You know, if you look at what ZAC does, for example, it's capture, release, sometimes smear and release. I have not seen real, tangible, conclusive action on corruption. We've got institutions that should be dealing with that. We've got the police, we've got ZAC, we've got all, they have got a real power to be able to do this. But I don't really think that that's what they are doing. Most of it is just to grab, smear, and release. And this is why I'm saying we need fair, strong institutions that work on the basis of the provisions of their mandates, rather than on the basis of manipulative instructions. I don't think you would believe that a mere councillor would be able to take 58 stands and distribute them and put them in his pocket. How does he do that? How can a mere one councillor like a case that I heard of here in Harare, where it's claimed that a mere councillor can have 38 stands, put them in his pocket. It's impossible.
But what challenges, for example, because our sponsors, partners, work closely with Mashingo councils, and what challenges do you know about Mashingo that you have looked at and want addressed as a political party?
Well. I mean, Mashingo, you just talked about the issues of the range, and let's look at the Regional Country and Town Planning Act, and see the reporting hierarchy until an estate is allowed to come up, like in the range. The council starts off with a proposal to say we want to develop here, and then they go to the provincial offices, from the provincial offices to the National Fiscal Planning Department, which then allows development to take place. So you can see there is a lot of process there. With respect to issues of then having 1 or 2 houses in the wetlands, I don't know whether that you would call that corruption, or, as I put it, incompetence.
But incompetence can be allowed to blossom to accommodate corruption.
That's the problem. Now, you have got a town planner, you have got a director of engineering services who is employed, not by the council, employed by central government. And who does this person answer to? Again, back to our systems. Let's make sure that these councils have got proper devolved powers so that we can take them to task where they fail. So we need to make sure that we strengthen these, because as long as we allow these labile situations with respect to intra-council relationships, efficiencies will be destroyed. Loopholes are created for opportunists, feeding the appetite for corruption.
Do you think that the current systems do not allow us to bring our local authorities to account?
Maybe before I answer that, my colleague mentioned the aspect of institutions, which I think it's very important for us to build strong institutions. That's a very given if we are to respond to the complexities of corruption. Also, maybe to add on to that, is that a strong institution needs to be also supported. In this context, we need councillors that play that oversight role, because there are some of the, for example, as give an example of the procurement processes that the councillors are not involved, but then they are elected officials. These are the people that we demand answers from, right? Whatever procurement is done, we actually ask our councillors, our executive mayors, to actually respond in terms of what is actually happening. So they actually play a role, councillors play a role in building those strong institutions within the local government. So I think maybe that's the point that I wanted to add. Your question in terms of are there enough frameworks that can respond to corruption within local authorities? Let me start by saying that some of the gaps that the AG has raised in terms of policies, it's an indicative that perhaps we need supporting to strengthen, also to develop policies that respond to some of the unique cases in certain areas, right? For example, where there are some of the local boards that do not have certain policies, town councils that do not have certain policies. So in some instances, I feel there are some policies that are still lacking, the risk management issues and etc. So these need to be put in place. But holistically, Zimbabwe is, I think, a fair enough legislative or legal frameworks to respond to corruption. That has been actually some of the corrupt cases that have been noted. I think we do have enough legislative framework. Obviously, there are some gaps. For example, we would need gaps such as a whistleblower protection to allow citizens to actually blow out the whistle on issues of corruption. So, but there are other supporting supportive legislation can actually help. But in fairness, on a scale, we should, with the current policies and legislation, we should be at a better position to deal with the corruption in Zimbabwe.
Are you worried about the selection criteria of councillors, or people who become councillors, you know, and their ability to then respond to corruption?
Well, it's a democratic process. I'm sure every political party has its own democratic process, and I'm sure when citizens participate, that they want blessed to be the councillor. I think we have to take that into consideration and not infringe citizens' wishes. So it's not about getting worried that a certain individual is a councillor, but if there are strong institutions, I'm sure we'll be able to mitigate any forms of fraud, corruption, and misuse of funds.
But I want to understand, when we say strong institutions, don't we also need strong people to make strong institutions?
Yeah. You see, I do believe in, as my colleague says, in democratic processes. I do believe in non-discrimination on any basis. But I do believe that for somebody to be a mayor, that person has got to have certain qualities, certain skills, certain experiences.
But we don't require that of a president. Someone just has to be 40 years.
Sorry?
But we don't require any certain experiences or thing for a president.
Well, I
Someone just has to
understand.
be 40 years.
I do understand. And
Why the bigger threshold on the mayor?
You see, when you look at the mayor, this is the person who looks at the very close to the people. You know, let me just tell you something. If a mayor buys a Mercedes-Benz for himself, it becomes a big issue. But if a president has got 15 Mercedes-Benz vehicles, a helicopter, and other things, you don't get the noise. So the closer you get to the people, the more effective you have to be. You have to be now like a technician. You have to be like a medical doctor. You must know the tools. You must have the tools. You must know how to deal with the smaller issues that relate to the people. You have to have those skills. You are not looking at things generically. You're looking at precision and detail. So for me, the mayor of Harare, because he's very close to the people, he is looking at minute municipal people issues. He must have certain skills, certain management skills, certain interpersonal skills, certain knowledge, so that he can deliver. That's my belief. And secondly, in addition to that, we are not lowering the standard. In addition to the skills, the person must be elected by the people. So we're actually saying, in addition to the skills that the person has got, we don't want an appointed person. We want that person to be elected. So he is a richer, he is a more wholesome manager of people issues. Then we also go to what we call chairpersons of committees. For example, the chairperson of the finance committee has got to have some understanding of Mari, financing, so that when that person interfaces with the director of finance, they are talking at almost the same level. They understand each other. None is fooled by terms or by detail hidden somewhere in a complex term. If looking at the director of engineering services, I believe they must apart from management knowledge, appeal to the electorate, they must have those skills so that they're able to...
What are you doing as a political party to ensure that you present for election those people with those qualities? Because remember, once you present whoever is elected in the office, and if there's none who has engineering skills or that understanding of finance, from that group must come out a finance director who then deals, especially finance director, finance chairperson, audit chairperson. These people are critical in terms of, number one, the audit, for implementing the resolutions of the findings of the Auditor General, the internal audits, and the external audits. And if they don't have that skill and understanding, this is why some of the things, in my view, as Ngobani says, continue to be recurring.
Blessed, the problem is that we are micronizing the thing to say, look, as a party, you must do that. For me, I think this is a national issue. We must agree as a nation.
But you're a national party, aren't you? Unless you are...
I mean, across the political divide, I'm not talking about just about political party. I'm talking about the political parties. I'm talking about the people. There are certain things that we must agree as a people to say, as Zimbabweans, this is what we want our local authorities to look at. Then we have got national policy. We have got legislation at the national level to prescribe the sort of chairperson of finance committee in a local authority, so that we are all agreed. What point is there in the MDC fielding a high flyer, and the next party, which will win the ward, fields Mr. X, who knows nothing? So let's all agree, so that whether it's ZANU-PF or MDC or NDU who eventually elects that particular mayor, it's a mayor of a certain quality.
Couldn't it make sense to you, Mr. Zai, that if you're going to provide, as a political party, someone who's excellent, because you say in your campaigns that you're a party of excellence, and if you provide that and you get elected and you begin to deal with these issues of systematic corruption, petty corruption, people will have more faith in you as a political party to actually govern this country, other than having most of your local authorities right now are in disarray owing to allegations of corruption.
Look, we have got more systematic challenges than our local authorities.
Are you trivializing it?
Trivializing
the issue that we're talking about?
No, this is a very critical issue. And I'm saying let's not look at the symptoms. Let's look at the root cause, you see. And let's look at Harare, for example. You are saying Harare is in disarray, and you must ask yourself why. Because we are not thinking together as a nation for the good of Hararians, you see. At the moment, the MDC alliance got elected into Harare, almost 100%, okay? And then comes the devious political processes that destroy that whole thing, that dysfunctionalize Harare altogether, that paralyzes Harare altogether. Where in the world do you find a council or a team that has been elected for Party X being recalled by Party Y? Where in the world do you find a devolved system where the council wants to employ Mr. X for his skills and competencies, and central government says, no, you won't elect him because he's not one of us? So it's deeper than this. We need a new Zimbabwe. A new Zimbabwe that doesn't jump onto political opportunity, but rather that wants to walk in one direction for the good of the people. It's not there. And the culture cannot be created by the babies at lower level. It's got to be created by the people and by the government. Look at South Africa. In South Africa, they have got a truly decentralized or devolved system. And the DA gets elected in the Western Cape. They are able to say, look, when we go wrong, it's us, no one is interfering with us. Because there is a formula for sender local fiscal transfers. Hakuna lugunzi, because you're an MDC council, you get less. There is no strangulation of revenue streams. There is no yo-yoing of people's resolution. The council makes a resolution, the next day the minister sits and says, no, you won't do it. So we have to look at the general context of what's happening in our local authorities. You look at the procurement processes, the council is just simply told, you are going to buy pumps from Mr. X, whether he's expensive or not or incompetent. You have to directive, not even to the councillor, directive to the town clerk to say you are going to buy this from Mr. X. And it happens. If not, then you are suspended or removed. So we have got a very complex situation in Zimbabwe, which we must all sit around and say we don't want this anymore. We want to move in a particular direction. Desist from this political opportunism. You know, the MDC must not perform in Harare so that we probably will get a few votes. It's not good for the people.
In your closing remarks, what do you think as Zimbabwe we should do to ensure more effective service delivery and accountability, especially at local authority level, because this is our focus for today's discussion?
Okay. We need to deal with corruption. Clearly, we might discuss about other political contestations and so forth, but what is evident is there is corruption within the local authorities. Perhaps I'll indulge you on this one. The Transparency International Zimbabwe recently is finalizing the National Bribe Payers Index, where we wanted to understand the patterns of corruption within all the government departments. And so we would ask, one of the questions that we're asking people, I think over almost 2.5 people were asked. And they were supposed to rate in their own perception or their own experience, which of the government departments do they think is most corrupt. And the local authorities actually came out as the third most selected institution.
After what?
No, I can't tell. So that so that by the end of the month you will share the report. But I'm just saying for these purposes that out of about 15 or so institutions, the local authorities, people view it as one of the most corrupt institutions, and they actually indicated lots of examples where they've been asked to pay bribe, etc., even to in terms of scans, even to process a plan, etc., and so forth. So these are some of the things that people do experience. So for us to actually really engage and actually ensure that there is effective service delivery, we need to actually create systems and follow through those systems and deal with corruption. And maybe as a parting shot, there's an issue that the AG raised, where that there were some pipes that were bought, and up until when the audit was done, they were not collected, they were not delivered. So my issue is, when such things are being realized, what impact do those issues have in terms of the service delivery? So in a nutshell, there is a relation between high levels of corruption and poor service delivery in our local authorities. So whichever political party is in charge needs to ensure that it actually addresses corruption by building strong systems and institutions and playing a very an oversight role in dealing with the corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwonzora. Your parting shot. I mean, do people of Zimbabwe, people of Masvingo, people in Kwekwe, in Gweru, I mean, are you doing, to ensure that they deposit their faith in elected officials and ensure that their money paid is not going to waste?
Well, for me, it's a simple matter. Firstly, if, like he says, that local authorities people are very aware of issues of impropriety on the part of local authorities. It must be like that because they are closest to the people and they live daily with the people, they breathe together, etc. So indeed it must be like that. What we need to do moving forward is to make sure that as the country, systems, let's build strong systems, let's believe in the systems, let's desist from politicization of service delivery issues, let's support local authorities in any way that we can, financial, capacity building, coaching, mentorship, shamboking where necessary, rewarding where success is registered, and then we move together.
Thank you very much for joining me, my esteemed panelist, HstvZim, the Secretary for Local Government in the MDC Alliance and former Deputy Minister in Local Government, and from the Transparency International Zimbabwe, where they look at corruption, red flag it, and raise issues and recommendations on how to best to deal with corruption. As Ngobani says, there is a strong link between high levels of corruption and very poor levels of service delivery. And once we ensure that corruption is gone, we improve the quality of service delivery to the people of Zimbabwe. And it's very worrisome that the index that's coming out says that local authorities who are actually closer to the people are the third most corrupt in this country. Third most corrupt. I'm waiting to find out who's number one and who's number two. But you can hazard a guess. This program was brought to you proudly in partnership with COTRAD, moving with communities, ensuring that communities have a voice in how they are governed, and ensuring that development begins at community level. And also in partnership with Heart and Soul TV and radio, we are the platform for dialogue. We are the alternative voice. We ask the questions that matter. We bring leaders to account to you. And today, in partnership with my friend from TIZ, we were bringing the MDC Alliance, which is in charge of most urban local authorities, to account to you what they are doing with your money. Until next time, thank you for joining us, and thank you for choosing us as your station of choice. I am your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga.